So last week, Ankama told us that they were gonna come back to us with the 3 concerns of the week, which were the rare drops, visibility in combat, and the hero mode. And they have done so. So first off, we're gonna dive into the rare drops article. It's not looking too good for the bugs in the game if they can't even make some links work on their website. All right, let's go into that blog post. To find yourself in the Jelly Peninsula to try to get your hands on a prestigious Gelano, or to hold your breath during the display of the fight recap at every Corcabulia, these certainly evoke some good memories. We're coming back to you today to take stock on the drop, its evolution, and its possible future. The drop has always been an unavoidable aspect of Dofus. The game has known a lot of changes through the years, such as the addition of challenges in 2008, the arrival of achievements in 2012, and the birth of idols in 2015. These systems shook up your habits and provoked in-depth changes on the PVM in-game. The example of idols is the most obvious. Yeah. These had such a large impact on drops and the meta that we decided to turn back the clock and remove them during the July 2023 update. Update during which we also touched upon prospection and achievement, which on their side experienced modifications on the amount of resources gained to revalue combat drops. So yeah, they removed the idols, but they increased the drops so that people wouldn't have to buy and use the idols to get the rare drops. For the younger adventurers, know that a few years ago, Dofus were not obtained via quests, but defeating certain bosses. Indeed, Dofus and certain resources were historically droppable but at very low rates. This rate was around 0.01% for Dofus, and for very rare resources, the skunk skin for example, this rate was between 0.5 and 2% of drops, thus making them difficult to obtain. Concerning equipments, historically they could be obtained up to level 70-80, like on Dofus Retro currently, but equipments that could be dropped above this level were rare. So recently they introduced the patch in which they added back some of the equipment drops, but I can't remember up until which level. I think it's up until level 60. We then decided that only low-level items would remain droppable, and recently with the release of Dofus 3, we allowed the drop of equipments up to level 60. There we go. To make you shiver even more. Okay, so previously you could get Dofuses by dropping them in dungeons. Now they removed that, they introduced quests. And they kept the low level up to level 60 items droppable. For instance, Gelano. Why make these changes? For the Dofus, Demon was there to make them obtainable via consistent effort. Indeed, the drop rate being balanced based on chance, more occasional players could experience a very long frustration of never obtaining what they wanted. For instance, the Paragon. If you're playing only a small amount of time every week, you might be super unlucky and try to drop the Paragon, and like you would have to wait many weeks, if not months, if not years, until you drop it, depending on what content you do, obviously. If you just farm an Nidus, then you have a higher chance to drop it. But difference between drops and rare drops. While modifications were made to meet community expectations, we have reviewed certain formulas in the last few years to give back some interest to PVM drops. Whether it's through the removal of idols, the modification on the amount of resource in achievements, or the regular balancing of recipes to adapt the destruction of resource in relation to their generation, these last few years I've seen many changes that aim to revalue PVM drops, but the emphasis was not put on rare drop themselves. So basically they want to not frustrate players by putting rare things behind like a low percent chance that people actually need. But they want to give value to just farming monsters so that people that like farming these monsters can have like a profitable activity to do. They just find the right anomalies and areas and resources that are more in demand, and they can just farm enemies and then get a lot of kamas in return by selling the loots. We prefer to put the emphasis on supply and demand to push once again on low drop rate resources, since the concept of rare drops can quickly become a source of frustration if this drop is seen as mandatory. It's currently one of the problems encountered in-game with the Parangon necessary to advance in the Dofus Volbix quest. So yeah, that's what I was saying. In parallel, the team reviewed its formula many times, notably by adding convention items and sidekicks, or rare sidekicks that you can drop, or you can also drop like limited edition items that are not actually limited edition, but they become rare. They keep their rarity by being like a super low percentage drop. These additions only partly answered to the request of return of rare drops. So personally, I'm not like I'm the people that are frustrated by Parangon drop, and I don't have the rose tinted glass of nostalgia to look at like, oh, back in the day when we can drop Dofuses or Dofus. I don't really see it that way. So for me, this blog post is a bit coming out of the blue, but I'm interested in reading more. The launch of version 3.0 allowed us to experiment on two interesting points. The return of low-level equipment drops up to level 60. This gave some really satisfying rewards during the leveling experience. Yeah, that's true though. The various balancings of the last few years allowing the existence of resources that remain high value. Yeah, so that's the point that they were touching a bit earlier. But these are not that much rare drops, but just drops in general, like normal drops. Even if something is 40% chance, if you need 60 of them for one item, then you need to farm a lot, so it gives value to that farming. And some of the rare drops, let's say for bosses, I really think it's on a good spot for rare boss mats and for, let's say, Gelanos, because there are two ways for you to get these things. So let's say I want a vortex wing for my gear that I want to craft. I can either try to have a lot of prospection and farm vortex, or I could like say I'm gonna do this achievement that I haven't gotten yet, and I'm gonna get it for sure, guaranteed. I have a harder challenge, but I'm gonna get it for sure. The same goes for Gelano. You can farm longer, get all the jellies and craft it, and then you have it. There's basically inbuilt bad luck protection. So that's what I like. And whereas the Paragon doesn't, like, let's say if the Volbis quest, every level 200 dungeon gave you one Paragon shard, and when you had, let's say, I don't know, 50 Paragon shards, you could craft the Paragon. So that means you can drop it first dungeon, but if you reach 50 dungeons of level 200 and you still haven't dropped it, then you can put all the shards together and craft one Paragon. That would be like a neat way of like every dungeon feeling like a progress even if you don't drop it, and remove some of that frustration. These modifications did a lot of good during the opening of new servers, and the general balancings also did a lot of good on older servers. We wish to continue in this path in order to have an economy that rewards time investment on PVM drops without having a too frustrating part part on drops considered rare. For equipment, we stop at level 60, but shouldn't we go all the way to level 200? That's a big change. We are currently thinking about the following system. Okay, here's the crunchy part. Part of the equipments up to level 200 will be droppable on monster or bosses, not all items. Dropped equipment would be considered as tier 1, generated with random stats. With smith magic not possible. Okay, that's interesting. Fusing multiple tier 1 items, or tier 2 or tier 3, will allow the creation of a tier 2 item. This item can be smith magicked and over as possible. Fusing multiple tier 2 items will allow exotic smith magic to be done on it, etc. Okay, interesting. Like, you have the gray item, then you combine 3 of them together and makes a blue item or green. Then you combine three green and it makes a blue one. That's a system that you can see in other games. This system would have 2 big advantages. Re-energize PVM drops, because this gives a strong interest to generating items of inferior tiers. If you want like a tier 3, I don't know, no marrow hat, then you have to farm a lot of, no marrow is a bad example, but cycloid. If you want a tier 3 cycloid shield with an exo AP on it, then you need to farm multiple tier 1 on cycloids and then combine them together, and then you have the tier 2 item. That's cool. You could also just, I guess, craft it at tier 3 directly. And that's interesting, because that also ties into last week's topic, which was PvP. If you can have cheap non-exo items on tier 2, because they just drop on monsters, then maybe you can assemble a cheap set with decent resistance and decent stats and go into PvP with that set, even if it doesn't have like crazy stats of tier 3. You could have multiple like decent-ish sets which are required to do more PvP and be able to fight in different scenarios. Okay, I like that. I need to see more details about it, but that's a good idea. Okay. Yeah, it gives a strong interest to generating items of inferior tiers, and also having a lot of item destruction when looking for optimization, while having competition on the generation of a rune. Oh, okay, so you destroy 3 gray items to make 3 tier 1 items to make a tier 2. So it destroys a lot of items, and since you destroy them to craft higher quality items, you don't destroy them in the rune, so it gives more value to the rune because less items get crushed for runes. Okay, interesting. The system is under reflection, and we're curious to hear your feedback in the comments. So I think this post, I'm really happy about this post, because usually on the previous weeks it's like, oh, we know you're having issues with it, we will be working on it after we fix the bugs and release Ozatopia. But this one actually has like a interesting part of game design in it. Let's see what people are saying real quick. Love the idea of dropping level 200 gear. Applying astral rules would be possible on tier 2 items if it's an overmage. In tier 3 if it's an exomage. Okay, this first astral runes, I'm not sure what that is, but that could also work with trance runes. Like, people have been asking of a way to have a deterministic way to AP or MP exo. So if you have like, I want let's take the cycloid shield again. If you want to have what guaranteed AP exo on it, then you buy 3 tier 2 cycloid shields, you combine them together, and then you can apply an AP exo on it, like trans AP exo or something like that. Oh no, they mean exo mage in not for exo AP or MP, but maybe like you want to add crit damage to an item that doesn't have crit damage. Either way, it's pretty cool. I like it. Use stars instead of tiers, please. Yeah, that's another concern. I think the tier system of loot up to 200 would do so much good for the game. So people, this is pretty fresh still, but people seem happy about it. I think that the lowest tier should have lower minimum and maximum stats. They should also look different. Yeah, that's also good ideas, but I don't think that's too relevant. Honestly, it sucks, Jay. You say you have like a quick argument of why it sucks before I go to the next article. Adds tons of needless complexity for no real reason. I can see that argument, yeah. Like as a regular player that loves like theory crafting and all of this, it's interesting to me, like the add the added complexity. But I can understand like for new players it would be off-putting. There's already way too much equipment in the game, not enough destruction. Adding more via drops doesn't seem like a good call, but they're adding equipments, but they're also adding like a way to destroy these items. But yeah, if you take a look like at quack items, they're always like super low percentage when you break them because you can drop them now. So if you have like the same scenario with all of the level 2, all of items for all levels, then it's true that it would be a bad situation. Okay, I'm not gonna linger too long on that. I'm gonna go on to the next topic, visibility in combat. The legibility of fights was never the first quality of Dofus, yet at a time where gameplay remained relatively simple, combats remained globally comprehensible. The only major difficulty came from height differences formerly present in the game, but along the years the complexity of the gameplay did not stop growing, and the in-game indicators no longer suffice in offering optimal game conditions. I 100% agree here. I don't really see. I think transforming it from the current state to a state where it's really clear what's happening would be a lot of work. But I think that's one of the biggest stoppers. I've played with new players that wanted to try the game, and that was one of the things they complained about, like things that were like super obvious to me, like where do I have a line of sight, how the line of sight is computed. They were used to other tactical games, and it wasn't super easy to understand. The last modification applied. The first legibility improvements in combat targeted maps. This is how tactical mode was born, functionality invented to compensate an historical weakness in the project. The legibility of terrains. This display mode had a unique goal, clarity before all. Progressively molded game habits into permanently advancing with this mode activated. So historically, people have been asking for tactical mode back, and Ankama has been pretty consistent with their answer. They said, no, we don't want to put tactical mode back. We don't think it makes, especially when you look at people playing on Twitch, on YouTube, doesn't look appealing for new players. And a lot of people playing more seriously, they wanted to play fast, so they were like creature mode, tactical, no animation. It looked just basically like chess. And to be fair, Dofus is a lot like chess in multiple ways, but it's also a lot of Dofus's selling points is the art style, the cute little Doug plushies, and stuff like that. So they don't want to like hide all of their work with one click of a button, and that's understandable. With the Unity board, the level design team had to heart the proposal of a new display mode called Semi-Tactical, marrying the comfort of tactical mode with the visual richness of the decors outside of terrains. This new mode has however not yielded results yet, and a lot of feedback call for a return of the original tactical mode. I don't agree with that. I think semi-tactical mode, I really love it. I have no complaints about it personally. For the moment, our priority remains to improve the semi-tactical. If once those optimizations are applied, there are still requests to the forum of the tactical mode, we will consider its reintegration. Unsurprising answer, and I'm pretty sure that people will still complain even if they do adjustments. It's just impossible to get, for example, every glyph to show up correctly on every color of map background without major changes to the system. You are right, Jay. I think there are scenarios that create really confusing combinations that you can't read. But let's first see what they propose for solutions. Personally, I really like I really like the decor around the semi-tactical. The ground in itself, it was black and white. I don't really care that much. It looks good when it's like fitting with the rest, but if we had a toggle to make it like grayscale, I wouldn't mind that much. Okay. We are, however, insisting on this point. If certain areas seem to cause issues, insufficient contrast, colors that's too light, for example, do not hesitate to share precise feedback on the matter. This will also allow us to target in priority the necessary corrections. With that being said, re-implementing the tactical mode as you know it from Dofus 2 won't be done in a snap of the fingers, understandably. The code was entirely deleted during the port, and the new map pooling per area functionality implies a complete revamp. This is not impossible to do, but we prefer to remain transparent. This would take a lot more time than a simple re-implementing. New way to think of fights. With time, the combat system complexified on every level. States applied on entities become extremely varied. As for glyphs, they are difficult to read today. Different effect triggers are generally accompanied by a message in the chat or a state which isn't optimal. There also isn't a specific staging for fights which hinder global clarity. I'm not sure about this sentence. There also isn't a specific staging for fights. Okay, let's read more, maybe we get answers. All of those elements make in-game combats more difficult to apprehend and sometimes even unpleasant to discover. With the technological changes linked to the port, we now have at our disposition tools capable of considerably improved visual feedback, whether it's on entities or terrain. Oh, interesting. The Osama Das Divine Dimension will be the first incursion of these new technologies. This content will showcase staging implemented to support the mechanics introduced by the game designers. This will be a first, and we're excited for you to discover this experience. Staging in this context, I'm not sure. I'm gonna, real quick, read the article in French to see if I can get some info about that. They say mise en scène. Visibilité en combat. Le contenu mettra en avant une mise en scène présentée pour soutenir les mécaniques introduites par le game design. So, it's pretty vague, but I think that what they mean is like, let's say in the not the Gladiator, but the Unity, like Japan Expo fight, there was this like portal, and the more the fight progressed, there were elements like that where wind was picking up and the portal was getting more glitchy and stuff like that. So I believe that maybe, um, like when the boss gets vulnerable, or you do part of the mechanic, maybe the boss can have like, let's use Tengu for an example. Tengu Snowfuchs. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but when you push the enemies that you require to push, or you hit with the weapon, they transform into a different visual. And maybe there could be like a map glyph or like an effect on the map that indicates like, oh, it needs to be diagonal or it needs to be in line or something like that. But giving visual cues, I think that's what they mean by staging. Yeah, they just Tengu is they do an animation, it transforms when it gets vulnerable. But some of the bosses like Obsidian, you push yourself onto it, just the icon changes, nothing else. I'm thinking they want to use like not just icons and states and chat, but like visual cues to tell you what to do. Like these transformation in Tengu, but better. Our ambition is clear, apply those tools to the rest of the game as much as possible. But before that, we need to take proper ownership of these tools in order to integrate states feedback directly on entities. Wait, but before that, we need to take proper ownership of these tools in order to integrate states feedback directly on. Okay, so they do it on Osatopia, and then they're gonna do it retroactively on other stuff if it's successful. Beyond pictograms, which no longer suffice to make combat legible, and sometimes there are states that don't have pictograms. On the topic of pictograms, though, some of the special challenges introduce like pictograms. Let's say I was doing what's it called, where you get the Calyptus dophus skunk. I was doing skunk, and the special is to kill them in a random order that's indicated by pictogram, blue pictogram above their head. And people with me doing the fight didn't notice this pictogram, and they were like, which one should I kill now? So it's for sure not the best clarity wise. We're excited to be able to properly benefit from this technological change and to work in depth on the visual feedback of combats to offer you a more fluid game experience. So unsurprisingly, they're working on new content. They're gonna maybe big red letters saying kill this one. Yeah, I think that should be like big flashing arrows like Las Vegas pointing, kill this one. No, but let's see what they cook in Osatopia, or the Osamada's Dimension, whatever it's called. And I guess we can give feedback at that point. Let's go to the next topic, which is the hero mode. Let's see. Best optimization of the client, better multi-account experience. The hero mode, currently known on Wakfu, has been the dream of many in the Dofus community for many years. Okay, before I keep going, it saved you some time on this one. Yeah, that's basically no, we're not gonna do it. Great. Great summary, Jay. Thank you. I'm guessing I'm gonna use the same vocabulary I used when I was translating the live stream. But my personal opinion on this is that I don't want the exact same thing. Wakfu is too different from Dofus in that regard. I don't want like to control 3 characters and like share one account, share one inventory. I'm saying this, but I don't know how it's working in Wakfu exactly because I only played Mo account server on Wakfu. But I think the current system of having multiple accounts, paying multiple subscriptions, having separate inventories is not problematic. The problem is running 4 instances. So if you could have like just a normal, like a browser interface where you have tabs like this, and each tab is basically one different account, but it's inside of a single client, I think that would be an quote unquote easy solution. Would save on the resources and it would change nothing basically. And you add some like organizer like features of like auto follow, auto click the same dialogue if it's at the same quest or whatever. But you still need to, I think economically it would be like the best solution, the best idea for them to keep having people pay for each account that they want to play. And yeah. Or maybe not tabs, but I don't know if you played Waven, but there's like this icon on the bottom right which you can switch character. And there, I guess you could switch like that using a UI of just, I want to see where my Iniripsa is. You click and then you see it. You have a shortcut like Alt Tab, but only for for Dopus. I think like that would be a good meet me halfway kind of solution. Jay, you don't seem to share that opinion. I'm gonna let you type if you have something to say about that, but I'm gonna keep reading. I had literally just suggested it. Oh, okay, you said add tabs to the client before I said it. Sure. All right. Multi-accounting on Dofus is very particular practice and inherent to the very genre of the game. Yes, there's no question about it. The tactical side quickly makes player want independence and being able to play many different characters, therefore try out different gameplay experiences, breaks part of the monotony of the game. However, this particular usage of the game multiplies the amount of clients launched, 1 client per account. This is the problem. The Flash technology made it possible to do so on almost any type of machine. People were playing like 8 accounts on a toaster and it was fine. Since performance were first and foremost linked to the strength of the processor, which allowed to play multiple accounts on laptop without a graphics card, Office or other. With the port to Unity, these performances have changed to become more demanding on machines. Multi-accounting is still possible, but not in the same conditions as before. By default, a machine of at least 8 GB of RAM is necessary, and then around 2 or 3 more are needed per account. So for a player who wants to run 8 accounts, you need, if taking max numbers, 8 plus 8 times 3, 32 GB of RAM. So 8 GB for one, and then 3 GB for each account. So 32 GB of RAM is not uncommon, but it's kind of big. It's up there. To this is added the need for a graphic card, not necessarily the most performing. Unity uses technology that requires certain calculations to be made on a graphics card, and not only on the processor. Reason why machines conceived for office work are no longer as performing as before. This is the minimum requirements to play 8 accounts in good conditions. We know that there remain many optimizations to make on interfaces, combats, etc. in order to avoid the deterioration of your game sessions in time. So yeah, they told us in the performance blog post Like, we made some questionable decisions in terms of interface tooling, automating from Figma to Unity directly, which I think is a terrible idea. And they think that too, but now it's a bit too late because they did that in order to go fast. So either they fix that, or they use only one client for multiple accounts, or both. Both would be the best, but what feature is expected? Following observations on performance, the topic of multi-account mode on a single client quickly raised in priority on our side. Yeah, it's kind of a band-aid fix, but still. Historically, there never was research made on this topic since the priority was lower when the game was on Flash. Yeah, sure. However, this feature requires a very long development time. Remember that on Wakfu, the development of this feature was done over a year minimum. But it's also a feature that is complex due to the various demands that would emerge in relation to the various game habits. This is why, to begin with, we propose 3 new game options: autofollow, autojoin, and autofocus. These features have the goal of making the game experience more fluid for multi-accounts. There's still some debugging and some particular cases to handle, mainly on autofollow. I haven't been playing multi-account, so I can't really comment on that, but even as a single account player, this is really cool. Auto join, auto follow, you just click those buttons, you let that other person take the lead, select the groups that they want to fight. They start a quest fight, boop, you instantly in the fight. That's really, for me, it's been like a net positive. In parallel, we read and exchange with the community on this topic and the expectations linked to the feature. Problem is located on 2 central points. Certain players expect the same hero feature as on Wakfu. This is a feature that gives the opportunity for a player to play as a team of 3 characters with only one displayed on screen. The player can quickly navigate between their inventories, quests, if conditions are met by all characters, are completed at the same time, etc. The number 3 is not random. Wakfu has dungeons designed for 6 players. No doubt that if we opted for this solution, we would probably have a standard hero mode for 4 characters. That makes sense, but I don't think that's realistic. Certain players want to keep the flexibility of the current multi-account experience offered by having multiple windows. What we mean by this, the habit and possibility of having characters in different locations, for example, a character in a mine and another visiting the resource marketplace in Banta. This game habit would be completely lost if we develop a new mode similar to the Wakfu Hero mode. But developing a solution allowing to place different characters in different locations seems excessively complex, and it's not the idea that we are favoring at the moment. Why? Well, just make like, I don't know, just make tabs. I gotta tell them about the tabs. I would, but they can't the ambassador role. I'm gonna touch on it later. All right. Let's remind ourselves that the first goal of such a feature in game is to offer multi-accounting with better performances than having to launch several clients. If this goal is not reached, it would be useless. Yeah, tabs again. Once again, tabs. Where are we at in the development of this feature? To be honest, the development of this feature is currently suspended, without much surprise. We had started a research and development phase in March 2024 to estimate the production costs. This R&D ended in August 2024, just before the launch of the Unity beta, because the priorities were changing. At the end of this R&D phase, we had a prototype that allowed the creation of a group with several characters who could fight together. Only combat was handled, drops and quests were not. They didn't think of the tabs. There were still many things to do, knowing that this research was only being made by part of the server team, and the client team was not yet solicited on this topic, the priority being the port. Yeah. With the bad experience in game early in the year, the backlog filled with debug tickets and clear requests by the community to focus on game stability, we prefer to put the development of such a large feature on standby to give us time to stabilize the project and the base game experience. This doesn't mean the project is abandoned, far from it. The priority after debugging will be to bring a better experience to multi-accounting. However, we want to reaffirm the fact that it's a long-term development. There will be nothing to show or test for several months. We are focusing a small team to the development of this feature as soon as possible. Okay. Ironically, with auto-join, auto-ready, and autofocus, multi-combat is basically solved already. It's the quests that get annoying. Yeah, autofocus is great in the fight because you don't have to alt-tab, and that removes the need for organizer and the such. External tools basically that allow you to alt-tab. I was using AHK script. I think many of the multi-accounters are using such tools because you want to consult Dofus Poly Noob and stuff like that, but you still want to cycle through your Dofus windows like separately. So you kind of need just alt-tabbing doesn't cut it. In the fight, that's solved by the autofocus, but you don't have autofocus for dialogues. So that's the biggest problem. Plus now autofocus is 100% working as far as I know. Like I said, I haven't tested it, but if it's working as intended, I think it's a really good feature. It's really nice. It feels like you're playing a single client. Almost as good as tabs. Almost. All right, so those were the three topics of the week. So just as a reminder, rare drops. They're thinking about some stuff, maybe tiers of gear that you can drop on monsters, but you can't you can't mage. Visibility in combat. They're gonna add some new features in the Azatopia dimension, and if it's good enough, then they will retroactively implement them in older fights. And hero mode, the development is paused, and they haven't thought of the revolutionary technology that is tabs. Now, they have identified the 3 next topics to be discussed next week. So that is Colosseum, a matchmaking sometimes seen as unbalanced, insufficient rewards, and a lack of game modes are topics that are often raised in regards with the Colosseum. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap between this and the separation of PvP and PvM, but I'm still curious to see. In the live this week, they talked about adding game modes. They talked about making it easier to go into Colosseum for new players, and they talked about having a diversity of rewards and not just pebbles, because when there's only one thing, people only see this and get frustrated. If it's too low, PvP player get frustrated that they don't get rewards. If it's too high, PvM players are like, why is my item half of the price of my item or more, 80% of the price of my item is only pebbles? So having many wide variety of rewards, I think would dilute the frustration of players. Professions. Hello, Early. Many of you report the repetitive and sometimes boring nature of professions and want to see this feature become more interesting and fun. Leveling up is too long. Resources are scarce. The ergonomics could be improved, and restarting on each character weighs on you, especially when you're in competition against bots. Adepts of Smith Magic also wish for more comfort on this feature. This is actually very interesting. I'm still on the video segment of the 12th news. I just finished covering the top 3 concerns of this week. And now I'm talking about the top 3 concerns of next week that I'm gonna go over on the next slide. Moderation. You share a lack of reactivity On anti-bot measures, you wish for a reinforced moderation team, more transparent follow-up procedures, and more severe sanctions on cheaters. We hope the answers provided. Oh yeah, that's the normal repeated part. So the one that I'm mostly interested in is professions. I remember talking to Papineau at the convention, and he was telling me about how he didn't like the current state of professions, and that was something that he wanted to change. So I'm curious to see what the vision of the team is regarding this. But yeah, I think the crafting professions are fine, but the gathering professions are like really frustrating. It's the same problem as Archmonsters. It's the same problem as rare drops. When you want to progress through something in the game, and it's blocked behind like RNG, something you can't control, and that has a lot of that has a lot of competition, it gets frustrating. When you play, you need to feel. Me personally, I want to feel some progress towards my goal. So like if I play for 1 hour trying to farm some corn in the Otomai, and every node is just gone, I just feel like I wasted 1 hour. So I think that's the same thing for like I'm searching for arch monsters for 1 hour. I found zero. Then I feel frustrated. So yeah, professions like gathering professions also are in this niche, and I'm really looking forward to if they have thought of solutions and stuff like that. Okay, one last topic that I want to touch on really quick before I end this 12 News second edition is, wait, I'm gonna need to find it. These were the topics of the community. This part. Hello everyone, want to come back to you on the project of community ambassadors presented in this letter to the community. So that's an answer to the open letter community post. These last few weeks, we took the time to reevaluate this initiative, and thanks to your feedback, this allowed us to better understand your expectation and to identify where you believe our efforts should be prioritized. If communication, transparency, and the way we collaborate with you remain important topics, they do not constitute today the heart of your concerns. You express a strong need for more stability in game, for more thorough follow-up, more efficient treatment of technical issues, and a reinforcing of the Dofus team in key roles. The moderation topic also comes up often. We heard your expectations. This is why we thought further about the organization of our team and the improvement of our internal processes, with the goal of better efficiency and optimization of the development of the game. In this perspective, and with regards to your feedback, we took the decision to press pause on the Community Ambassador project to focus on more essential recruiting for Dofus in the medium and long term. An offer for a Dofus Game Director role has already been published. Other roles, both strategic and operational, will join this recruitment in the weeks to come, notably in the areas of communication, bug tracking, and moderation support. We hope that the next months will bring the necessary and awaited changes in order to bring you the most pleasant and performing game possible. Thank you for your continued engagement, and see you soon. So as some of you may know, I did apply for the community ambassador. So that part of me is really sad about this. I thought this would have been a really nice opportunity for me, and a really nice opportunity for me to represent the English community. But the player part of me kind of agrees with this. They are doing fine right now. My view on it was that these ambassadors, me included if I was hired, would alleviate the task of interacting and reading the community feedback from the people that are doing right now. So it would stay at the same level of quality, but it would free the people that are currently doing it, like Riebeck, for instance, who is assistant producer. And Riebeck, instead of reading the chats, could like do the actual tasks that are in this task description of his job. So that was my vision of it. They don't seem to share the same vision. They want to keep these people that are currently doing the communication doing that because they seem to be doing great, and hiring instead technical people to come in and improve the processes of the game. I think that's also a nice way to put it. So the player in me is really understanding this change of heart, but I have to say I'm a bit sad that I won't get to do this role. If they're going to focus on debugging, all the game designers can take a break for a few months as well. Answer forum topics. Yes, let's let's see how it goes if they do that. That would be some. I would have a lot of popcorn, and these 12 year news segments would keep on forever.